guys. Happy Sunday. How's everyone? Hope your day is going really well and you've had a great weekend. I have got a very special guest with me today and I can't wait to introduce him. But before I do, let me say hello to you guys and thank you for joining me. So we have got Mark the Infinitely Tired. Hello, love. Good afternoon. Louise Sparrow. Good evening, sweetheart. Jester of Sin. Good evening to you too. Derek McManus. Welcome. We have got a Polymis Minion. Hello, sweetheart. Colin P. Smith, good to see you as always. Rambling Canuck, good afternoon. Good to see you. A big welcome to Creepy Little Book. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you. We have also got Didi Myers. Welcome, good to see you. Positive Candle, hello. Robert Pearson, good evening. Project Storytime, good to see you. James Andrew Morrison, good afternoon, good evening. We have got Dadman Walking 55. Welcome, Naughty Monkey Oraf. Hugs to you. Paris, good to see you as always. I think that's everyone at the moment, but as people jump in, I will say hello and good evening or good afternoon. So, as I was saying, guys, I've got a very special guest today. Very excited to have him on. I've been binge watching his channel recently. Absolutely loving his content. So let me introduce to everyone Enter the Unfamiliar. Welcome.
Hello, good morning, or well, it just turned afternoon here for me, and good evening if you're in the UK. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. Very, very excited to get to talk to you. We don't get to talk kind of basically the content that you do very often on the Valkyrie channel. We've kind of covered it a couple of times, but not into the depth and detail that you've gone into in your channel. So very, very excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, we definitely go down some rabbit holes on my channel. You know, I keep my videos a little more structured into kind of the basic news stories, a little more accessible. But then our live shows, we go down rabbit holes in the live show into territory that a lot of people either don't know about or are maybe uncomfortable hearing about sometimes, depending on our topic. So yeah, it's interesting. It's fun to delve into these though.
It really is. Do you find that YouTube kind of penalizes you a little bit for this kind of content? Because I've heard in the past that they're not too keen on people kind of talking either supernatural or conspiracy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of censorship when you get into conspiracy stuff. It's funny because just recently they had put out a statement saying, and this is like within the last couple weeks, saying that they were going to be easier on channels that were covering kind of the conspiracy theory topics, because they had, which in and of itself does admit that they were censoring, because you can't come out and say, yeah, we're going to be easier on these channels that are covering this. I mean, that's admitting that you weren't before. So there is a level of censorship that exists on YouTube when you get into certain topics. I think it's, it just depends on what the powers that be want and don't want getting out there. It's definitely with political stuff. I don't really get into the political stuff, although sometimes it crosses over because I do think all this stuff is connected, so that it tends to cross over, but you have to be very careful with what you say there. But when it comes to the supernatural stuff and, sort of the alien or UFO agenda, or I take the point of view that these entities are interdimensional, not so much from another planet, although there could be some crossover, that kind of stuff. It doesn't get censored as bad as the political stuff, but I've definitely gotten some interesting little footnotes below the live streams. If you've realized that, I don't know if you've had any of that before, but if you have, like, if you're opening the live stream right now, if you guys are watching on YouTube, beneath the window, sometimes there'll be a little bar, and it gives like a description. And I've had like an Illuminati description come up beneath my videos on videos where I don't even talk about the Illuminati, but somehow it pops up there, and it's just weird things like that. It's like, how did that come up? Where would they have gotten that from? So there's different things here and there that I feel like, they are kind of watching and
Yes, there's
yeah,
definitely shenanigans going on with YouTube at the
that's a
moment.
good word. Yeah, definitely shenanigans.
Yes, because we were talking in the green room just before we went live. We were kind of comparing how our channels are going, because we're kind of we started at almost the same point. We're kind of neck and neck, and we're building at the same time. And you found that there's going live. Alerts aren't really going out. Likes are disappearing and reappearing, and yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard from a number of people now that they don't get the notifications when
Mhm.
my live streams go out. They know, because they know it's on Sunday nights. I do a Sunday night show at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time every week. So people that are used to it, they know to come find me at that time. But a lot of them will say like, yeah, it's a good thing I know you're live right now, because I never got your notification. So it's interesting. There's also been people people that are my friends that I stream with often. We always do crossovers on each other's channels, and it's happened to me as well, where they'll say, hey, I just went on your channel and I was unsubscribed to you. So it's like, really, that's funny, because you're actively watching and liking or commenting. So it's not like, it's not like the algorithm should have viewed it as someone who's been dormant. Sometimes they say, well, if there's an account that follows you, but they haven't been active on your channel for a long time, the algorithm will kind of weed that out, and they'll unsubscribe them thinking it might be a bot. But that's not the case for everyone.
No.
Specifically for the friends that are like actively on your channel and liking and commenting. There's no way that should have happened. But like you said, shenanigans ensue, and that kind of stuff happens.
It's all fun and games of being on YouTube, I guess. But huge congratulations on your channel. You've smashed past 1K recently. You've just become monetized, and you're doing incredibly well.
I did. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just hit my 1K and monetized. I think I was 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, I really appreciate that. That was a big moment after 2 years, 2.5 years now, I think.
That's amazing. So pretty much the sky's the limit now. You can only get bigger and better, and yeah, if you guys aren't subscribed to Enter the Unfamiliar, I highly recommend doing so, because it is a fantastic channel that he's got. But
Thank you so much.
let me kind of dive into, is it a fascination that you've always had with the kind of supernatural and the unknown? Is that something that's been constant throughout your life, or is this a kind of recent fascination?
It's been there for my entire life. I mean, I think really what started the UFO interest, or like other life, galaxies, planets, that kind of thing, was my love of Star Wars growing up. I mean, the first movie I ever saw was Return of the Jedi in the theater. It was when it was re-released in 1984. My dad took me to see it. I was 4 years old, yet I remember it so vividly. I mean, it just had such an impact on me. That kind of started my fascination into the sci-fi, and like, I mean, I just thought, how cool would it be? Are there worlds that have this kind of stuff? That kind of did your fascination as a kid, well,
Yeah.
and as an adult. And from there, I kind of started getting into Star Trek, but I would watch the original series on TV when it was on like late at night, and then I used to buy the VHS tapes when they were still VHS tapes. I'd buy those and watch those. So I kind of got into it that way, and just it went on from there. I've always been into superheroes, so all that kind of stuff was always just there as a kid. And then as I started getting older in my 20s, I started kind of looking into the religious stuff, because I was kind of raised Christian, but we weren't really, we were like, we'd go Christmas and Easter and kind of just, it was kind of okay. Yeah, it's probably there or whatever. The Bible, it's probably stories, and I don't know. So I think it was pretty much 2008 because I had been in New York City when 9/11 happened, so I lived through that, and then the economy tanked, and we're at war and all this stuff's going on. I'm like, man, the world's getting crazy, and then there's UFO sightings are increasing like crazy. And I remember watching a show on the history. I think it was the History Channel at the time, and it was like, Armageddon, the prophecies of the Bible, are they true? Or the end times here? I thought, wow, that's fascinating. So let me really take a look into like the supernatural, Christianity, the UFO phenomenon, and mix this all together and see what I believe. And I took about a year like studying, and I realized there's so many parallels and crossovers with ancient texts and I mean that's obviously the Bible, but then the Sumerian texts. There's so many crossover Egyptian texts, the Roman and Greek gods, and how that ties into the Bible's description of the Nephilim, and that's like it's basically the same entities that the Greeks called the Titans. There's so many crossovers with all these ancient texts that are describing a history that they were writing as factual in many cases. They were writing as this stuff happened. Now, fast forward to our time, we look at it as myths and legends. But I think that's just because there's a history that's been kind of covered up from us, and it's been intentionally covered up or obfuscated from us. But we find this archaeology that points to things, aligning to a truth that we're not being told.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of really got into like, okay, well, what are these entities? And then now science is coming out and saying, well, there's, we imagine there's multi dimensions, and some UFO researchers are now saying, Jacques Vallée is one of the most popular ones who believes these things are interdimensional entities. And I think there's this huge story that's being covered up here. And that's kind of what I get into with my channel. I kind of deal with the UFO phenomenon, how it's linked to biblical prophecy, and then the supernatural and the ancient histories that, the megalithic structures and these places that seem to be really highly charged areas of supernatural activity.
Mm-hmm.
That we now find archaeological evidence that something did happen there that we're not being told, or it defies the logic that we're being told. Like, these structures were created in some cases thousands of years ago. And, we didn't have, allegedly, according to our history, we didn't have the tools. We didn't have the means to be able to create these things. So how was it done? There was obviously some kind of intervention outside of the human ability, or either information was passed to us, which has now been lost or covered up through time, or we didn't create these things, something else did.
Yes, yeah. As you say, there's throughout different religions there seems to be key points that kind of interconnect.
Yeah.
Did you also delve into things like prophecies like Nostradamus?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Oh yeah, when I was getting into this whole topic, I went through the Nostradamus prophecies, some of the Catholic priest prophecies. There's a really interesting prophecy of the popes that was several hundred years old, and it's allegedly a list of every pope up until the current one, which happens to be the last one on the list, and that is the last one that is supposed to be reigning until the tribulation comes, which is fascinating. And everyone gives a little description of what that pope, either something he was known for, something he did, the crest that he decided to choose, a family lineage. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty accurate when you look into it. And Nostradamus also, a lot of those prophecies, are pretty close. I mean, some of them are kind of vague and you can kind of interpret them, but a lot of prophecies are like that. It depends on the lens in which you view it in. But some of them are pretty interesting and pretty close to real life events. So yeah, but I definitely got looked into the Nostradamus.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of the ones that I've read, they come just that little bit too close to hitting home
Mm-hmm.
to be dismissed outright.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You talked about interdimensional, and that's something that's kind of come about, especially in the last few years. That's kind of a big talking point for a lot of people.
Hmm.
So, in regards to aliens, but would you kind of ascribe that to things like ghosts and shadow people as well? Because that seems to be sightings, um, seems to have kind of skyrocketed in the last 5 to 10 years as well.
Yeah, the shadow people, for sure. Those sightings have seemed to gone up. The stick people, sightings of them, they've seemed to gone. Yeah, I think that it's an interdimensional thing for sure. I think, when we talk about like the spirit realm, for religions or I mean, I guess New Age to an extent too. I think you have to view these things as different dimensions. We kind of take the supernatural and sort of make it mythical or magical, where it's like, oh, spirit realm, and it's all ethereal, and there's no physical nature to it, and ghosts are these disembodied. I mean, I think that's probably not the correct way to view this. I think these are different dimensions, and we are able to only see a certain a certain a certain distance. We can't see into different dimensions, although there seems to be ways with either drugs or meditation where you're kind of lifting your spirit out of your body and you can access these different levels. Now, I don't think that's good because I don't think we're meant to. I think we're prohibited from, or not prohibited. Well, we kind of are prohibited from doing that naturally. We have to get in some sort of trance, and then all of a sudden you're able to kind of view into these different realms. But it's a dimensional thing, and science is starting to back this up. So this mythical, magical view that we kind of have as a society of, the supernatural and the, this, the ghost realm or whatever. I think it's just a dimensional thing. I mean, when you look at CERN, the leader of CERN, or one of the head researchers of CERN, came out, it's probably about 10 years ago now, and said that one of their main objectives of CERN, and CERN is the Hadron Collider that's in Switzerland.
Yes, it is.
It's they're trying to figure out the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, basically, by kind of trying to recreate it on a mini level, which seems incredibly dangerous. But that's another topic.
Seemed kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? The day they powered that up, I cringed. I was like, oh my
Oh
god.
yeah. Yeah, it was like, what's going to
Please
happen
don't.
here? Are we going to have like a splitting of the timelines? Is that what happened? Is that why 2020 was such a reality show or a sci-fi novel? And
Well,
something happened with
you
CERN?
say that, but ever since that CERN did get powered up, things have gone very, very weird. So
It's
I'm
true.
thinking,
No, it's
did
yeah.
we get knocked sideways into an alternate dimension? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Is there an alternate? Yeah. Something happened with the timeline and we ended up, not where we were supposed to be. There's another version of us somewhere in another timeline that's like, living the life that we should have had, but something happened. But anyway, so this head researcher had said that one of their main objectives is that they want to send a note, information through this portal to access a different dimension where they could either send something in or maybe something else will come out of it. Okay. And this is science. This isn't like mythical, new age. This is a scientific facility with a head researcher literally saying that we're trying to access another dimension that we know is there. And either we're going to send something through or maybe something's going to come out of it. That again seems very dangerous to be messing with things that we're not naturally really supposed to be messing with, but yet there it is. So science is starting to prove these supernatural, beliefs or the mythos of the past. It's starting to now align with what we know is reality.
It really does. And if you think back even only, say, 100, 150 years, what science is doing now is what mediums and psychics were mocked for trying to do, having
Mhm.
seances, trying to contact the dead.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, but now
weird.
it's viewed as scientific study. So it's now it's serious. I mean, I say this often. All these conspiracies of the past, it's only a conspiracy until it's true, and it's like, well, that's a theory. I mean, UFOs were, oh my gosh, they're tinfoil hat wearing crazy talk. UFOs, you're nuts. You couldn't say you saw a UFO if you're an airline pilot. My God, you would be, your job is at risk if you said you had a UFO sighting. So pilots were silent about it. But now the government's coming out and they've changed the name to UAP. Ooh, unidentified aerial phenomenon. So now it's official. Now it's like, it's taken seriously all of a sudden. And now you're not a conspiracy theorist. Now you're a researcher, and if you're a
Stigma's
pilot,
gone.
it's okay to say that. They're coming out right and left saying, yeah, we saw this. We see this stuff all the time. Well, what happened? What changed? It's just the government's position. Well, now it's okay. Now we're starting to, have soft disclosure. We're declassifying it little by little. So now it's taken as science and research. So what used to be conspiracy theory is no longer conspiracy theory. That's why I say, take things with a grain of salt, but never shut something down because it sounds crazy. Because 50 years ago, UFOs were crazy. People that saw them were out of their minds. And now it's like, over 50% of the population believes or has had some sort of sighting or something that they can't really explain. So,
And it seems to be every other week, especially obviously now that we have the internet, we have YouTube. You see people, Twitter uploading videos of orbs, of unexplained lights, just ghost encounters, shadow people encounters. It just seems it's so much more prevalent now. And as we were saying, the stigma is kind of gone now. So it's very interesting to see how things have flipped, and I'd be very curious to see in the next, say, 10 years how much more we're going to have released. Because a little bit at a time we're being kind of drip fed what's been declassified.
Yeah, it's like a slow pressure that's building, or like a faucet that's dripping, and then they're just turning up the water pressure little by little, and we're getting more and more information. And it seems to be coming on at a much quicker pace. I mean, you've got Tucker Carlson on, Fox. He's kind of the mainstream media guy that's got all these government officials and pilots on, and they're now all talking about their experience and their sightings, and admitting that these things are real. I mean, you have the Nimitz encounter, which I did a video on, which was a Navy ship that was off the coast of California. It was around the Catalina Island area, and it had this encounter with the Tic Tac. This Tic Tac object that was kind of dipping in and out of the ocean super fast, and it was making these fast, quick right angle movements, and they were having trouble capturing it on radar, but they did they were able to trace it, and they've got the video, and that's been declassified now, and they've come out and said, yeah, that's real. We don't know what it was. We don't know if it was, I mean, they haven't said it's alien, of course, but they
it was
can't
something.
describe it.
Yeah,
it was something that defied our abilities as much as far as we know, with aircrafts. It was doing things that you shouldn't be able to do. I mean, just the inertia of some of what these objects do, the speeds, and then the ability they have to stop on a dime after going at like supersonic speeds and then make right left angle turns. That would kill anyone inside of that, unless it's a drone or something.
Yeah,
you'd be splattered. So there's something they're able.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
no, sorry. Continue. I was just going to bring up about Tic Tacs.
I was just going to say they have the ability to do something beyond. They're breaking the laws of physics, as we know. So either they're interdimensional and they don't have to adhere to our laws of physics, or they're able to somehow shift the gravity around the vessels, so they're not adhering to the gravitational pull of the Earth. I mean, they're just doing things that should be possible.
So kind of emitting their own gravitational field. Yeah. I've heard that before. What I was going to say about the Tic Tacs, do you think it's strange that we're now getting less and less reports of the classic flying saucer, but now we're getting reports of basically, as you say, Tic Tac shaped objects?
It's very interesting that early reports of UFOs were all flying saucers. They were all the circular with the little top, the little bulb on top. I mean, the classic UFO sighting. And then slowly it started changing to the cigar shaped ones, which now seem to have shrunken into the Tic Tacs or the black triangle ones. And you wonder, like, well, what happened? Is this just another alien race that is now visiting, and did the saucer ones kind of disappeared, or is it something else? Are these things changing as they see fit
Hmm.
because they're keeping up with whatever we're able to do. Like where I'm going with this is if you look at like the abduction stories for UFO abduction stories, there's always something going on. It seems to be genetically, or there's some kind of ovum taken or sperm taken, some kind of sexual thing taken, where in some cases they're shown hybrid or some kind of child later on if they're taken again. There's something with the reproductive system. There's some kind of torment that goes on, and it's very, very similar to what the Middle Ages had talked about with demonic possession, or like the night terrors that would come in the night, but they would describe them as like monster looking creatures, not really the the grays as we kind of commonly view abduction stories. It's usually the gray entities that seem to be performing the abductions. So there seems to be a parallel between what happened in the Middle Ages and past that, post Middle Ages, with the demonic appearances at night and now UFOs. So either they were UFOs back then as well, or these UFOs are really some kind of interdimensional entity, possibly demonic. I think they seem to change with the belief that we have as a society, the current belief and the current understanding of our universe. A lot of the early UFO stories and contactees would say, well, these things are from the moon, Mars, and Venus, because that's about as far as we could see. And then our technology got better. We saw further into space, and they started changing the story. Now they're from further away. They're from Zeta Reticuli, or they're from farther off in the cosmos. And it seems like, well, why weren't they? Is this a new group that just got here, or is their story changing depending on our understanding of the universe, which
Yes.
seems to be deception? And that's kind of Jacques Vallée's, that's sort of where he ended up in his research. And he's a non-secular. He's not he coming at this from a religious point of view at all, but he got to the point where he decided these things are interdimensional. They're deceptors. They're trying to deceive mankind for some reason. And they're, seem to be obsessed with our genetic makeup and our reproductive system.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. I don't know whether it was as prevalent over in the US, but at least in the past here, we had a lot of stories about fairy abductions, especially
Mm.
children, and then obviously leaving behind a changeling creature in the place of the
Mm-hmm.
child taken.
Was a changeling? Would that be like a hybrid kind of creature that looks
Pretty
sort of like the child?
much, yes, it looks like the child, but
Mm-hmm.
if the child that they had was, very well behaved, then this creature was, cried a lot. It was maybe deformed, maybe had like a club
Right.
foot, whereas it didn't have one before.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot
Wow.
of stories about that in the past, at least over here in Britain. And even to this day, fairies, they're not the sparkly, good creatures that,
Right. It's not
fables would have you
Tinkerbell from
believe.
Disney.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's more. You don't mess with the fairy folk.
Right. Right. Oh, interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of I mean, that kind of gets into a whole nother topic, is uh these hybrid entities that have existed throughout history. Again, ancient texts talk about this kind of stuff, where these, the gods of old came down and mingled with mankind and created a non-human race, that was part human, part something else. And that again goes into the modern age with UFO abductions, where a lot of people are taken. I mean, I had someone I interviewed a few weeks ago on my channel, and he had an incredible story of being taken multiple times. Some of his story lined up with other accounts I had heard, that he wasn't even aware that some of the details had lined up. He was like shocked to find that out. And, I said, yeah, I mean, that kind of verifies and validates your story, because, these are typical things that have been said to have happened to people who were taken. And he was, one of the times he was taken, he was shown this childlike creature that he said looked like him, similar to him. It was a kid though, so it looked like it could have been one of his kids, but also looked sort of alien. The eyes were bigger. It didn't look fully human. So, that makes me think, wow, is something going on in the modern age that happened in antiquity? Is there something that's going on again that's happened once before, and now the same cycle is starting to repeat? So that's very interesting that you mentioned that with the fairy abductions and then some kind of changeling, being put there, because there is a belief that there are hybrid entities that are, either amongst us on Earth, or they're being taken off planet and they're being kept somewhere else for now, and you could go on and on about theories of why that's happening, but it is a common, well, I'd say common, common as far as the fringe communities, with religious and also the non-secular ufology. There's this belief of hybrid beings.
Yes. Would you say it's fair to say that when it comes to aliens, there are some that are more kind of well known than others? We've talked about the Greys, but there's also the reptilian races that get mentioned a lot.
There's the Greys, there's the Nordics, who are pretty much like humans. They have the long blonde hair, really crystal blue eyes, or usually blue eyes. Sometimes they could be sort of green, but they have, very striking features. They're slightly taller but look human. And then there's the reptilians. Some know them as the Draconians because allegedly they come from Dracos, which is interesting, the dragon, the serpent. I mean, you kind of tie things into like the religious with the Bible talking about what happened in the Garden of Eden, with the serpentine creature that was there and tempting man. And, the Bible talks about these angelic, one of the classes of angels are serpent-like. So there's interesting parallels there, and they come from the dragon constellation. They're kind of the most popular ones, though. There's another one that's sort of a mixture of the Greys, but they look a little more human. They're also supposed to be, I think they're taller than the typical Greys, and their eyes are not as black. The Greys have the black eyes, almond-shaped eyes, but then there's these a little more humanoid looking ones. So you wonder, is that just like a different genetic version of the Greys? Is it a hybrid version, or is it a different entity altogether? They're kind of the most common ones throughout history. You've got these long-necked, I forget the name of them now. They were known in Peru. Also, they were known in the Middle East, but they were the long-necked ones. And they allegedly had a sort of cone-shaped head, elongated skull. And we find traces of this in archaeology, specifically in Peru, because Peru is an interesting place. Not only are there tons of megalithic structures that defy logic, but there's a lot they haven't really closed off, or the government hasn't confiscated as much evidence there. So you can kind of go and dig and find things that you aren't able to have access to anywhere else on the planet right now. So researchers have gone and found these skulls that are different. They're elongated, and they're not, in many cases, they're not caused from cradle headboarding. Sometimes they are, but even then you have to ask, well, why did they do this? What was the purpose of, taking a newborn and making a cone head? Who are they trying to emulate? Because usually you would want your child to emulate something, some kind of godlike creature you're worshiping, right? So why are they trying to make their kids into cone heads? But in some cases, it seems that they are not cradle headboarded. They were naturally born like that. They're missing the sagittal suture, which is one of the, our skulls have like 3 different lines or cracks in them. And some of these don't have the third line. It's a genetically different skull than humans. So you find these traces of this other kind of entity that existed. And they've had anthropologists that said, well, the only way that this skull could work, based on the size and the shape and where the hole in the back of the skull is that connects to the spine, is that if it had a very long neck. This, whatever this entity has to have a long neck. So, and then it's just ironic that that's also, one of the common alien entities or creatures, the long-necked ones. So there's so many crossovers, but the most popular, definitely the Draconians or the reptiles, which, David Icke, we were talking about David Icke, who's over on your neck of the pond, or your neck of the woods, your side
David,
of the pond.
yes.
Yeah, he's very, very well known for talking about the reptilians that are in charge of the world and all that kind of stuff he gets into, and the Greys and the Nordics. I think they're the three most popular ones.
Mm. Yeah, just touching on David, like I watched the show that you did about him just recently. A very, very interesting interview. He is kind of someone who's kind of easy to dismiss as a bit of a crackpot, he's easy to ridicule. But as we
Yeah,
were saying in the green room, there's just that little kernel of truth that he hits on that's not easy to dismiss.
yeah, he's said things that are hard to dismiss. I mean, it definitely when he was saying 20 years ago that the world was headed towards a one world financial system, and this elitist government that was going to take over, and things that like 20 years ago you thought, well, I don't know, I mean, it seems kind of far out there. But now where we're at today, you're like, oh my gosh, that's pretty much where we're at. It's kind of what's happening. You see this march towards globalism and kind of this elite structure. And I mean, it's hard to dismiss some of the things that he said are now what we see going on in our world today. So where, is that just a really, really good guess, or was he onto something? Did he have some kind of communication with some sort of entity that's beyond our understanding that was kind of giving him or downloading this information? That's kind of what he said. He had this experience where he was, ironically, Peru. I mean, there's something to be said. There's a lot of weird stuff in Peru, but he was in Peru and he had sort of this download of information. I mean, it almost sounded like the way he describes it, almost like a possession of some sort, but, his body was like shaking with energy, and there was a storm that hit over his head. It was raining on him, and he has this really fascinating tale of how he was given this information, and then everything went dark, and he doesn't really remember anything for, I think, a good few months. Anything that he had been downloaded with, he doesn't remember, and then a few months go by and all of a sudden something clicks and he starts remembering little bits and pieces of all this stuff that was like, I guess uploaded is a better word, uploaded into his body or his mind or his consciousness. So, and then he starts telling people about this stuff. He starts going on these public speaking tours, and people thought he was crazy at first. And then all of a sudden he starts to get a few things right, and people start looking again saying, well, maybe you're not that crazy.
Oh, yeah, I mean, some of the ways he goes about it, perhaps not the best, but
Yeah.
it's definitely hard to dismiss everything he says, as you say, definitely. Um, I've read a couple of his works, and I've seen quite a few of his interviews, and he always comes across as someone who believes absolutely what he's saying. He's not doing this, to string people along. He's not doing it as a laugh or to be a con man. He genuinely seems to be someone who believes his experiences.
Yeah, I think so too, especially when you look at his career. I mean, he was a pretty well received researcher, journalist, host of, programming, TV shows on the BBC. I mean, he had a career before all this. So you don't just decide, hey, I'm going to throw all this away and start talking about crazy theories, and hope that hits and hope I make, millions of dollars doing it. I mean, that's not, he was ridiculed at first. He almost, he kind of lost his whole livelihood for a little bit there until what he said started kind of coming out true. Some of what he was saying was true. And then people started taking a second look, and then he was able to get more gigs and, go on tours and build a life for himself. But I mean, you don't do that if you don't believe, you don't take a chance on something like that if you don't believe what you're saying is accurate. It just doesn't make sense.
Especially 20 years ago. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 20 years ago, before this stuff was popular and mainstream. And, this was still back when pilots weren't even felt comfortable mentioning UFO sightings because they were, worried for their livelihood if they did. So, I mean, this isn't something that was very accessible back then. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense that you would make that kind of life change for, risk your livelihood and your reputation for something that is a lie. It's not logical.
Absolutely. Do you have any favorite, well, I say favorite, in quotations, supernatural stories or happenings that have been reported. Ones that come to mind would be something like Skinwalker Ranch, for example, or the Hopkins, the Goblins, which took place in Kentucky, if I remember correctly.
The Skinwalker Ranch is definitely. I did a whole series on Skinwalker Ranch on my live show. I did a couple. I don't know. I think I did like 3 shows on it. Because that's definitely the in my opinion, the number one place on the planet that has the most unreal supernatural activity going on there. I mean, you could say Peru as a whole, there's a lot of weird stuff there, but Skinwalker Ranch is so unique. It has every bit of paranormal supernatural occurrence in that area. And it's not just Skinwalker Ranch. It's all of the ranches in the what's it called? The Unitah Basin. It's every ranch that's in there. They all have very odd experiences. Robert Bigelow, who was a previous owner of Skinwalker Ranch, he had said that in an interview I was watching, he had said, well, I owned it for a long time, and a lot of my experiences are out there and known. But if you think what happened at Skinwalker Ranch is weird, you should ask the fellow farmers in the different areas, all the ranches around that. That's even weirder stuff going on over there, which I can't even imagine. Skinwalker Ranch is just the one that's kind of become notorious because that was bought by Robert Bigelow, and he did all the research there, and he worked with the government, so it got all the fame and notoriety. But it's the whole Unitah Basin. But you could run the gamut of, I mean, it has UFO sightings, it has ghostly hauntings, it has the skinwalkers, which are basically some sort of human entity that can change into a wolf, almost like a werewolf kind of, basically. It has shadow people.
Mm-hmm.
It has portals that have opened up, and people have seen this portal opening up and this shadow creature crawling out of it and running at superhuman speeds up a hill. So there's 2. This was, I think, was this Robert Bigelow? It might have been after Robert Bigelow. It might be the current owner. No, it was Robert Bigelow. It was him. He had 2 of his workers that were at night looking down. They were up on the top of this mountain range, and they were looking down right in the middle of the Unitah Basin. And they saw this, all of a sudden this spiral started opening up in the middle of the basin, and they said they could see into it, and they saw daylight on the other side. So it was night, when they were there, it was nighttime, but they were looking into this spiral thing that was appearing, and they could see clouds and blue sky. And all of a sudden they see this shadow, human looking, human shape shadow creature that's crawling on its hands and knees, comes out of the portal, stands upright, and then takes off running up the mountain range towards them. But it was, not like at them, but it was in the direction that they were in. And it's flying up the hill and speeds on by them and goes off into the night, and they lose track of it. I mean, what the heck is that? It's, how do you explain that? There's electronic disturbances, the common battery draining on all equipments, things malfunctioning when you want them to happen. It just, everything you could possibly think of seems to be happening at Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, you got to ask yourself why, this is such a highly charged area. Something might have happened in the past there. I mean, there are massacre stories where one Native American tribe cursed the land because of they were being run out of that area, and they cursed the land and cursed the other tribe, and that maybe that's persisted there. It could go back even farther than that. We just don't really know. It's fascinating. It's one of the weirdest places on the planet, if not the weirdest.
Really is. When I kind of first started looking into it, just as you say, the level of just weirdness, everything from orbs to, even on the first day when the Sherman family arrived, this giant wolf-like creature turns up.
Yeah. They shoot it. It goes running away. They shoot it like 4 times. Finally, the guy takes, like, with a rifle at close range. Finally, he takes a chunk out of it out, and then it goes like running off. So he chases after it, and I believe it's snowing at the time, because he could see that he was chasing the paw prints, and all of a sudden he gets like before a river. I think it's like 50 feet before the river, and the paw prints just stop, but there's no sign of the wolf. It just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, and
like
yeah,
it
and it was
was a
huge.
portal. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy story. Can you imagine like seeing that or living through that experience?
I couldn't, to be honest, and I know the family were absolutely terrorized by the end of it when they were desperately trying to sell because they were having
Yeah.
poltergeist activity. You know, they were putting things down and things were disappearing. Food uh, being taken out of cupboards and being stacked up on the counters.
Yeah, allegedly they sold the
Orbs.
place.
Hmm.
They sold the place with, the kind of the way they kind of describe it, it may be sensationalized to a degree, but they pretty much sold the place while dinner was still on the table. Like they got up and left and like never went back, and they hadn't really packed all their stuff. They kind of just like, okay, we're getting up, we're leaving now, we're never coming back. And that was allegedly how they found the place. They still had two huge chains that were bolted to the walls of their house that had extended, I don't know, maybe I think it was like 5 or 6 feet from the wall, and they had two huge collars. And now what was going on? Were these like guard dogs that they were keeping, or was there something else going on there? But that's, you don't really walk in a house and walk into the living room and you've got these two huge chains bolted to a wall with collars on them. What
Bolts
was
all
going
on the
on there?
inside of the doors, yeah. And
Yeah,
I
yeah, bolts
think
on the inside of the doors.
favorite story was the one about the balls, where they found them all crammed into this one container. And Sherman said that there's no way you could have gotten one of these balls in a container, let alone five of them.
Yeah, let alone yeah. There's also the story. Well, so actually now there's a Skinwalker Ranch TV show. I think it's on History Channel or Discovery. I think it's History Channel. It's only been one season so far, and it's the current owner who's going through it. So they've been researching and documenting some of their experiences, and just some of the stuff they find that they've been going through, that they've captured all this on film is pretty odd. But they went down to the basement of the caretaker's house, and the caretaker, it's this couple that lives there, and they've been reporting that they're hearing bumps in the night, bangs on the floorboard from the basement, and they go down. Of course, there's no one there, there's nothing there, but they're hearing all this stuff, kind of poltergeist activity. So the research crew goes in and they're looking down in the basement, and they find this wall that looks like it doesn't match the rest of the walls. It's concrete, and like, well, this kind of looks out of place. Let's see if we can drill in, see how far it goes, see what else is back there. So they drill in and they end up finding an open concrete square. It's a hollowed square of concrete that was
Hmm.
put there. Now, there's no door, there's no airway, there's no windows to it, right? It's just there. Inside of that, they find the bones of what they believe to be an animal, but they said it could actually be human. They're doing DNA testing on it. So, it's kind of like a cliffhanger to see if it gets picked up for season 2. We'll find out, what were the bones? Were they human or were they animal? Because if either way, it's odd. Why would you have left a dead animal or human
Up
inside of
inside.
this
Mm.
squared hollowed cube that you sealed off with cement? No airway, there's nothing. Why would you do that? What was going on there? And this is in the basement that the caretaker said they're hearing all these bumps on the floorboard in the middle of the night. So, there's just so many anomalies with this place. It's crazy. Okay, yeah, it's on the History Channel. There you go. Yeah. What's up, Chris? Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite kind of. If you're gonna have a go-to supernatural experience, that's pretty much a good place to jump in because, as you say, it just covers everything. And one of
Yeah.
my favorite ones, which I will take with a grain of salt, was a report of dogs wearing trench coats, smoking cigarettes.
Wait. What was this? Dogs wearing trench coats?
Yeah, apparently, um, kind of standing at the gate, and they were witnessed a couple of dogs standing on their hind legs, wearing trench coats, kind of like cartoon almost, but
Yeah,
actual
it sounds like
dogs.
the famous painting of the dogs playing poker
Exactly,
around the table,
exactly like that. Yeah,
smoking the yeah, yeah. Wow.
that one I will take
That's a
with
funny
a big
oh,
grain of
that's a
salt.
funny
So,
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a little harder to That's a little harder to believe, but there's definitely weird things with animals. I mean, there's cattle mutilation there, which has been documented. Linda Moulton Howe, who's a big time UFO researcher, but also kind of the authority on cattle mutilations. She's been there and documented the cases of cattle mutilations where it's so odd that these mutilations happen seemingly within minutes. There was one where they knew this, they had captured on video the whole herd of cow all moving from one side of the ranch to a side of the ranch that they had never been to before. They all moved suddenly for some reason to this other side of the ranch, like, clearly on the opposite side. And this one cow stayed, and this one cow had somewhat of a heart attack. They're not really sure how it was caused. It just seems like it suddenly got, what they said is it like instantly got pneumonia and died, like instantly within minutes. So it had pneumonia and got heart failure, but there was no signs of pneumonia in this cow before. So it's something very strange happened. It dies. There's a UFO. They've got this on video that pops up above the tree line, right above where this cow is. The UFO hangs in the same spot for like a minute and then instantly moves to a different spot in the sky, same area, but different spot in the sky within an instant. Like, you blink your eye and it moved position. Somehow it teleported basically. And then it goes away. So after that, they find this cow's dead and it's mutilated and it's missing its eyes. It's just the classic, like the organs are gone with laser precision. These cattle mutilations always happen with laser precision. The eyes are taken, tongues taken. In some cases, the organs or genitals of the cow are taken for some strange reason, but they're taking like with laser precision. And no scavenger will go near the cow. That's the weird thing. You think if it's just a normal death, or if the cow just died or something killed it, then scavengers would come and eat the flesh off the body. I mean, that's what happens. But no scavenger will come near this cow that had this mutilation. And you got to wonder why. How are the animals, these scavenger animals, which survive on eating these, the corpses of these dead animals, why are they not going near this one specific cattle, or this one cow, that had this thing happen to it? And they've got the video of the UFO over the cow in the area at the time that they know this thing got sick and died. So, and that was also Skinwalker Ranch. So cattle mutilations too. Check.
Definitely one of the weirdest unexplained phenomena. And it's one that I kind of want to delve into it a little bit more. I've done like a basic kind of overview of it, but definitely one that I'm going to have to look even further into. And
you can keep going on and on. Yeah. Looking into that, because it seems to be always evolving too. Black ops, helicopters flying over, planes that go over that don't have their GPS tracker on. It's just so strange, the stuff that happens there. Hey, what's up, Bone?
Hey, Bone, huge thank you for
right here. Yeah,
$5 super chat. He says, I've seen them too final. They've always been here right above us.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they've always been here.
Yeah. Have you ever, this seems to have gone out of fashion now, but what do you think about stories of the Men in Black, for example, that tie in with alien abductions and alien accounts?
Yeah, I mean, that's another really interesting topic that the Men in Black, we don't really know who they are, other than they seem to, you're right, they haven't been talked about as much recently, and that's weird. It seemed when it was taboo to talk about these things, they would show up more, and you'd hear more encounters with these Men in Black that would show up, scare people out of talking. In some cases, they were reported as not looking really human, almost humanoid themselves, where they would have the basic structures of a man, but their features would be odd, like they'd have no eyebrows, or they would be, they would both like there'd be two of them. Yeah, mannequin like, where they look the same. They'd look like twins, identical twins that would, they didn't have all the features of a man, but they looked basically like men. So yeah, you got to wonder what's going on there, and why aren't those stories being told, or the encounters occurring as much as they were? Now that we seem to have been more open with the UFO
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon, and now it's kind of becoming mainstream. Are they pulling back on these encounters? Do they now want, before they didn't, maybe it wasn't the scenario, the stage wasn't set yet. So they didn't want this stuff getting out. So they sent these men in black, whoever they are,
Mm-hmm.
to scare people off, but now they want it getting out. The agenda is now we're ready to let them know. So now, they're pulling back on the men in black, and maybe they're not coming because that's not the agenda now. It is odd. There is that one really good video that I think it's from an office building's security camera. It's in the lobby, and it has these two men in black entities like walking in, and they have it on video, and you see, I mean, it's a little grainy because it's a security camera, so it's not the best, but
Move in unison.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're moving in unison. They look identical. They just look so odd. And then the story is that these things came up and knocked on the door and, scared the crap out of whoever they were. I forget who they were going to talk to. But it stopped them from talking about whatever they were going to talk about or whatever experience they had, other than it did come out. I guess once someone saw this video, it did come out that, yeah, these weird humanoid people came and scared me. Yeah, I saw the black-eyed children mentioned there. That's a
Yes.
whole nother. And I wonder, is that some sort of
That's a
hybrid?
recent phenomenon, isn't it, really?
It's more recently. Yeah, I'd say the last 10, 15 years, it started to be reporting that these children there's been some mass sightings at like a convenience store. I guess a group of people saw these things outside the store, like looking in at them. But in most cases, it's at night. It seems to be around dinner time or right after sunset, dusk seems to be the common time that this occurrence happens. There's a phenomenon where this household will get a knock on the door, and they open the door, and the children that look like children, they look normal until they open their eyes or they look up at you, and their eyes are completely black. And they say strange things like, "Is it dinner time now? I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Can we come in? Let us in." And
That's a big one. Yes, requesting
yeah,
to enter. Yeah.
yeah. Yep, they have to. It's almost like a vampire thing, right? A
Yeah.
vampire can't come in unless you invite them, which is, again, I think there's just so many similarities to all these occurrences, these medieval myths, and these, creatures that are supposedly made up. But it's funny how many similarities there are to this UFO kind of phenomenon. But yeah, they seem to not be able to come in. If you say no, you cannot come in. You close the door, they leave. If you do let them in, for some reason, if you do let them in, then strange things will start happening to you in the future. Like you have bad luck, you have health issues, something bad occurs after that. It's almost like you've been cursed. There was a story of a woman who was in a parking lot, and this black-eyed kid approached, I guess was somehow appeared in next to her car, and her child was in the back door, and the entity asked the child, "Can I come in?" And the child let him in because he didn't, it's a kid. I guess they didn't know any better. And then the mother gets in, and looks in the rearview mirror. It's like, what the heck? You just totally freaks out because there's this other kid who has black eyes, and kicks the thing out, so it leaves. But then the child gets sick and like has, I forget what kind of sickness it was, like leukemia or something really terrible happened. I think the kid recovered, but it had gone through a lot of really bad health issues, so there's something very, very strange with
Yeah. They
that.
definitely seem to be a harbinger of, either doom or bad omens. The other one that seems to be a little bit more prevalent nowadays, and there seems to be a lot more sightings, we kind of touched on, stick people, which is kind of a
Yeah.
weird one, especially ones they've been reported as to wearing top hats, which
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
very odd thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Very odd thing. The top hat, yeah, the hat man. It's very strange. These long stick-like figures, almost like a shadow. You can hardly see them. They're so thin, but when they move or run, you can notice them. And yeah, they're wearing top hats, which is very strange. But these things seem to be located around the wooded areas typically. Apparently they can, I think there's something with whistling around them that you shouldn't whistle around them, or they get they get triggered, I guess, for lack of a better term. They get triggered if you whistle around them. and they'll terrorize you as well. And again, they'll get, it's like a bad omen, they'll cause problems, or
Yes.
I mean, it's like it all seems like some sort of demonic oppression, not possession, but oppression. Um,
Yes. They do seem
but
to
there's
be
something with the top
surprised
hat.
as well when people see them. It's like they're kind of shocked that they're seen, like they're just passing through dimensions. The
Right.
same with
Yeah.
shadow
That's
people. Yeah.
mhm. That's what I wonder. If it's an interdimensional thing, which I believe it is, but if it is, we're only able to see through a certain scope, or we can only see like a wavelength. We can only see certain wavelengths. If these things are vibrating at different levels and they're able to pass through dimensions by vibrating at certain levels to hit different dimensions, then we're only seeing part of it. It's kind of like a stick man. Well, yeah, ironically, the stick man theory, where if you were to take a piece of paper and you drew a stick man on the piece of paper,
Hmm.
it's a 2D world, So if you being, in a 3D world that we're in reality, if we take our finger, which is we look at it and well, it's a 3D object. Well, if we put that in the middle of a piece of paper in Stickman world, all they're going to see is a circle. They can't see the dimensional, they don't understand the scope of a 3 dimension. So they don't see the 3 dimensional finger. They just see the circle, the outline that your finger would make in their dimension. So I wonder with Stickman and Shadow People and even some of the UFOs that, the orbs of light, things that seem to move or morph. I mean, there's UFOs that seem to morph or change, their structure changes. Are we only getting a 3D view of a 4D object or, a 5D object? Are we only able to see what our reality is allowing us to see? If they're coming from a higher dimension that say maybe they're 5 dimensional beings, well, we're only going to be able to perceive what our 3 dimensions can, allow us to see. So we can't see the full being. So these stick figures, maybe, I mean, there's probably more to it than that. If you view them in their dimension, they're probably fully formed or have different features, but we're only able to pick up on what what we're able to see of that entity in this dimension. I know it kind of sounds weird and out there, but
No,
it is a plausible thing because we don't know these other dimensions, higher dimensions. We're not sure what they're able to perceive. If they're a higher dimension than us and there's more to it, then we're going to only be able to see what we can see in our 3 dimensions. So there's more there that we're probably not able to see.
I think the chat definitely agrees with you because Felix says we can only see our visible light range. So anything beyond that, we can't really comprehend what it is we're seeing. So
Right. I mean, it's like
it stands to
animals.
reason. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, animals can see into different. Well, they can hear into different megahertz, and they can see into different light spectrums. So they're able to pick up on things. You always see like the dogs barking at a corner. Just nonstop barking at a corner or barking at a closet. For no reason. Like, what are you doing? They seem to be looking at something. But we can't see it. But they're able to see into a different light spectrum than we are.
Hmm.
So are they able to pick up on things? I think they are. That we can't see.
Yeah. So
Like
animals
they're barking
definitely
because
do
they
seem
know
to
something.
react before a supernatural event happens, even
Yeah,
natural disasters as
right.
well, for
Yeah.
example.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, earthquakes or there's Yellowstone. When something's happening at Yellowstone, you'll see animals all rushing away from that area as almost a predictive measure. Well, if they're rushing away, something might be stirring there at Yellowstone.
Something's been stirring at Yellowstone for a very long time.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's the
Yeah,
problem.
that is a big problem. That's a big one. Yeah, if that goes, oh man, world changer.
Absolutely, quite literally, yes, yeah, that would
Yeah,
be almost extinction level
yeah.
events for us.
Mhm. Yep, it would be.
Oh my gosh. Before we close up tonight, I've got to ask, have you had any personal supernatural experiences?
Yeah, I've had a couple UFO sightings over the last few years. Two of them I've been able to capture on video, and I put these out. I've shown these on my live stream and talked about them and stuff. But there was well, I've had four. Two of them I was able to capture, and two of them I wasn't. But I'll talk about the two I was able to capture. One was, I guess, was this 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now. My wife and I were at the beach at sunset. This is in California. It was in the Malibu area, And we're at one of the beaches there, and we're just watching the sun go down, and I look over the ocean, and I notice this like black kind of circular object just hanging above the water, and it was stationary. And I thought, well, that's weird. It's not the mast of a ship. There's nothing there. I mean, it's far out, but it's not that far out. Like I could see it with my eyes. So I thought, okay, maybe it's a helicopter, but there's no propellers. There's nothing else there. It's just like this, almost kind of like a tic tac shape. Although it wasn't it was a little more oval than cylindrical. And I'm watching it, and I want to get a better view. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could get a closer view. And I thought, well, I got my cell phone. So I took my cell phone out, and I used like the zoom in function to zoom in on it. And I saw, yeah, there's no propeller there. It's just like, just a sort of oval black object that's hanging in the sky. And so I started filming it, and I kind of show the moon and get scope, and I'm like, okay, this is real. It's not, and my wife sees it too. And slowly it starts moving. So I start, I film them. So like tracking it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what this thing is. This is like a UFO, and it's going across, and it starts lowering towards the water line. And now it's right above the water line, and it's moving to the right, kind of like north. Yeah, it'd be north along the water. And suddenly it dips into the water and disappears. And I thought, oh my God, this is definitely something, this is like, I've captured something, because there's no craft that I know of that does that. It goes from aerial to submersive, in like the span of a couple minutes, without changing shape or anything else. So I've said that to a couple people, and they've looked at it and said, yeah, you caught something there. It's pretty interesting. So that was one I caught on video. The first one, I was in Arizona. It was late at night, and I just happened to look up at the right time, and I saw a perfect triangle with 3 orange strips of light on each of the corners that was it wasn't hovering, it was gliding slowly over me, and made this like most smooth turn. It wasn't going fast. It didn't make a sharp right turn. It was just gliding slowly, and it made 0 sound. And it was as black as the night. I wouldn't have even known it was there had I not looked up at the right time. And I saw this thing. Now I don't know if that was government or not. There's a lot of the rumors of the government test craft.
It's just swamp gas. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Swamp gas, right? It's all that. Yeah, like it could have been a TR-3B, which is like one of the secret planes of the government, Air Force. So or swamp gas. Yeah, I don't know, but that was an interesting. That was my first sighting. That was at nighttime. The time of the day, Larry. The time of the day of the one in the ocean I caught on film, that was right after sunset, right after sunset, because we were there to watch the sunset. I think the sun had just gone down when I noticed that thing was there. That was that one. The other one I had, so this this is maybe the most fascinating. So my wife and I were in Joshua Tree last summer. We went there for like a week just to get out, and it was during the shutdown, so we're like, let's get out, let's go out to like middle of nowhere, and nice fresh air. So we go out there, and Joshua Tree is a very well-known place for sightings. I didn't go out for this reason at all. It did, of course, it crossed my mind, like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I'll see anything. Wouldn't that be weird if I did? So we're the first night we get there, we're outside, and we're like in the desert, and we're looking off on the horizon, and about 20 miles away, we see this triangle set of lights that's above this mountain range, and it's slowly lowering itself. And I have this on film. I've got this on video too. It's slowly lowering itself beneath the mountain range. And it's like just three lights. It was too far away. I couldn't see if it was like a triangle shape, like a solid object inside. You can't tell from the video. You just see 3 lights perfectly in unison, all lowering itself beneath this mountain range. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. And I was able to get that on my phone video too. And then for the span of, I think it was like 6 nights or so out of the 10 days we were there, or 10, I think we were there 10 plus days, 6 of the nights we saw orange orbs appearing in the sky, all over the sky in different areas. For this, it was like 6 or 7 nights. They weren't consecutive nights. Sometimes they were. We'd maybe see 2 nights in a row this would happen, and then the 3rd night nothing, 4th night it happened, 5th, 6th night nothing, 7th, 8th night it happened. It was just so strange. And these orange orbs would like a pop in the sky. I mean, it wasn't a flare. You didn't see anything coming up from the ground. There was no smoke. It would just boom, like boom, there it was. And it was bright, and it would sit there for a little bit, and then maybe a second would appear close to it, and then a third one. I think at one time we caught 3 or 4 at one time, and then they would just blink out. Like they would just kind of get small and disappear, and then another one would pop up. And this happened like over the span of hours. And this happened all over the sky that we could see in the span of those, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 days out of the 10 plus we were there. It was happening. And I have this on film too. I actually went live on Twitter as this was happening. I was live on Twitter now it was on camera and it was at night. This was happening like 9, 10 in the evening, 11 in the evening. So it's hard on a cell phone camera, it doesn't have like night vision. It was hard to get really good, images of this. Like I wish I had a camera that was better, had night scope and all that, but you can definitely see them popping out and appearing and disappearing. And I don't know what they were. I mean, they weren't flares. I've looked up flares before, to see what they look like, how they appear in the sky. They didn't lower, they didn't move. They would just stay in the same place and then disappear.
Flares have a certain pattern that they follow. Obviously, they shoot up into the air and then they arc back down slowly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So
oh my gosh.
I guess you could say fortunate enough to be able to capture that stuff too. So I've got some pretty interesting footage that I've just
can these be found on your channel?
I'm sorry?
Can these be found on your channel?
Oh yeah, they're definitely in different areas of my channel. My live streams, I've shown them a few times. I'm gonna actually put together a video that has all of them because my editing skills have gotten a little better now from when I started. So I'm gonna do a video that's got all the footage I have on it, so I kind of have it compiled, because it's kind of like I've shown like maybe this footage here in this video, and I've done a live stream that's shown a few things. Definitely the live stream that I did with Peter Hanna. He's the one that's the alien abductee that was taken multiple times and shown the child I talked about earlier in the show here. If you guys want to look at that interview, first of all, that's a fascinating show, fascinating. His story is amazing, but I definitely show that footage in that live stream. So you can definitely check that out. It's the one, it's titled, it says Peter Hanna in the thumbnail. So you can take a look at that. And the footage is shown there. But I am going to compile it in like one video, which shows everything. It's edited a little better.
Awesome. Definitely, guys, check that out. What have you got coming up, sweetheart? Because I know you've got a show this evening as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. I have a show tonight. So we do a show every Sunday at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And I've got Flipped Out of the Fandom Collective. He's my co-host, and it's Enter the Unfamiliar Live. And we go through different topics. We'll cover either one topic 1 week, or we'll do like a series where we'll maybe like the Skinwalker Ranch. I think we did like 3 shows just on that, depending on the topic and how much you can cover. But we do it every week. Tonight, we've got a guest that we'll be talking about. He has had a UFO experience, and he's also had some kind of, I mean, he describes it as almost poltergeist, possibly oppression or possession, demonic possession in a place that he lived. So it's going to be very interesting. It's Phoenix Animation is his Twitter handle. So he's going to be on as a guest, sharing his experience into the paranormal and the UFO. He's had both. So I'm very excited to listen to him and hear his story. So that'll be tonight at 6 o'clock. If you guys are interested and want to hear some spooky stories, he told me, he's like, just want to give you some warning. There's it's kind of a demonic oppression, possible possession, and then some bad stuff that happened. I was like, no, bring it on. I want to hear it.
Delving into the darker side tonight.
Yeah. Yep. Delving in the darker side tonight. Yeah. But I mean, this stuff goes on, and you gotta cover it. So
that is cool. So I will be definitely there listening tonight. Thank you. Honestly, this has been a fantastic chance to get to chat to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and thanks to everyone in the chat. I have been seeing your guys' your comments too, and yeah, there is a lot of stuff. Puerto Rico, Peru, the Vatican with the that's a whole nother thing. They're talking about aliens coming to Earth, and they've been watching something from Mount Graham in Arizona. There's so much you could get into, but I've been watching your comments, and you guys are making a lot of great points there too. So yeah, I appreciate you commenting, and thank you very much for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we have the best chat. And big thank you to Bone and Larry for their super chats. Thank you, guys. Um, as Enter the Unfamiliar says, he will be back on this evening, so be sure to check his show out. And I will be back tomorrow morning. So I will be joining Loki, and we're reviewing Mortal Kombat. And then I will be back at 10 Central for my regular show. So a huge thank you to my fantastic guest. I'd love to have you back if you
Oh,
would.
absolutely, sure, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. And a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us today. We really appreciate you. Please sub to this fantastic channel. You can also find him on Twitter. Links are all in the description. And have a fantastic Sunday, guys. I hope you have a brilliant day. And I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.